Time to check in with Tom Mulcair, a feature brought to you by Guaranteed Industries, reminding you want to stay nice and cool. It's a great day to have a great system in, but hey,
I'll say.
Make sure your system's running at peak efficiency. Give them a call, 342-3400, Guaranteed Industries, for 75 years serving Montrealers. So, Tom, first of all,
Tom's
welcome back.
It's great to be back.
Nice to have you back.
You look great. I saw you on TV. You have a fabulous tan.
Yeah, it's kind of easy with the sun we've been getting.
Well, you do. You look terrific. You've been working out, Tom?
Swimming every day, yes.
Wow.
That's been the beauty of the summer.
Good for you.
Good.
Lucky.
Good.
Hope you had. Well, it's nice to hear you had a great summer, and we're happy to have you back. And we'll jump right in. So let's talk about. I want to make sure I understand this first topic. Are we talking about polling numbers for the federal Liberals in Quebec, and are they as bad as they are apparently in the rest of Canada for the Liberals?
The Liberals are not doing great in Quebec, but they have a certain core group, the same ones that provided the provincial Liberals with the opposition status in Quebec City, official opposition status. The federal Liberals are still going to be able to count on 20 or so ridings in the Montreal area. But everything else is going to be in play because their numbers are really dismal. Pierre Poilievre, Quebecers haven't taken a shine to him. His numbers are not as great here in Quebec. It might be helping, of course, the Bloc Québécois. But if they do wind up turning, they're going to start eating Bloc Québécois vote. And you've been through this so many times like I have. Once there's a wave building, Quebecers are going to want to be on board. They're not going to see a government get formed where Quebec will not have a certain number of voices in Ottawa. So that's one of the things that you have to keep an eye on, because those results could change very quickly in favor of the Conservatives if they start building ahead of steam, as they appear to be doing in the rest of Canada.
Okay. Look, I know it's always important, I think, contextually, Tom, and I know you point this out all the time, to remind people, despite these numbers, which have not looked good for the Liberals for quite some time, we are nowhere close to an election, and you shouldn't read too much into this, right?
Doesn't matter,
No.
yeah.
And I know that Trudeau and the people around him had been doing focus groups and doing opinion polls like crazy, internal polls, trying to see if there was an opening. Is there an opening? Is there an opening? Because, on issues like housing, affordability issues writ large, things like inflation, Poilievre went after one target. He spotted it. He identified it. They had great research that was driving it, and he really started to score. And what's fascinating to see is that the federal Liberals under Justin Trudeau are now in third place amongst young voters across the country, because those young voters are going over largely to the Conservatives or to the NDP. That's always own pocketbook issues. But what's new is to see a young-ish, quite doctrinaire Conservative saying, this is an issue of fairness between generations. You're going to be the first generation of Canadians who are going to have less than their parents and their grandparents. Good luck. You don't have much of a chance of ever owning a home, and that was always taken as a granted in Canada. You played by the rules, you worked hard, you'd have a chance to own a home. And as that was slipping away, he was talking to a target audience that has begun responding very positively to Pierre Poilievre's message.
Okay, so how drastic? I mean, it would have to be a very drastic change here for things to turn around if an election were to be called anytime soon. Again, it probably won't be at this point. I think that things have shifted so much that's no longer in the near future. How much better would these numbers have to be for that to happen?
Well, I think Trudeau's just going to have to ride it out. He's going to hope for a change of direction. He's got all of his options open. He could simply decide to pack it in, throw in the towel, and say, I've asked the party to organize a leadership race. That would be in 2024. Give the other person a year and a half to show their stuff, because if you don't give them enough time, it can be disastrous for them. So I think that Trudeau's going to keep that option on the table as well. He's been through a lot personally. He's paid a very heavy price personally for his political career, and I do think that it's something that he's going to be giving some serious thought to. That's
funny, because before you had said you thought that he would be like in fighting form, especially up against Poilievre. So you think his marriage breakup over the summer, things have changed?
Yeah, I think that might play into it. But the other thing is, too, yes, he's a fighter, but also if he looks at those numbers and says, I've got a really serious chance of being badly beaten by the Conservatives, he can go out on a high, 3 wins in a row. And if he runs the risk of going after Poilievre, because he does find him an irresistible foe, because they have such, completely different visions of the government's role in society. And if he convinces himself he can beat him and it doesn't work out, well, he doesn't end very well, does it? I mean, it's like Harper. Harper won 3 times, same as Trudeau. Harper won 1 majority, 2 minorities. Trudeau, same thing, 1 majority, 2 minorities. And then Harper, steadfastly said, I'm going to take this one last chance, and he really got thumped. So I don't think that Trudeau wants that, and everybody would certainly forgive him. And he's got probably half of the large corporations in the world who would give their eye teeth to have this guy on their board of directors. He's such a good communicator, and he's got such an incredible Rolodex of every international figure. He's going to be at the G20 in India, where he shines. This sort of international event is what he likes the most in the job. And guess what? They're going to love him, and he's going to take a shine to it again. And I don't think that Trudeau gets enough recognition for the fact that he's internationally really one of the better leaders in the world right now. And is he going to be able to translate that into votes at home? I don't think so. I don't think it's working anymore. That sort of charm back home. People want, they want pocketbook issues. Yeah. They want bread on the table at a reasonable price. They don't want to keep paying through the nose and living inflation and seeing that a house is unaffordable for their kids. They want a different solution, and it's not the Liberals who have been providing it lately.
Yeah, as far as India goes, it can make an impact, of course, Tom, depending on how he's dressed, right?
So
this is true, but you can be sure that they're going to be very modestly dressed and for the occasion.
Do you think history will be kind to Trudeau?
Overall, yeah, I do. I'm very much of Brian Mulroney's opinion on this, because one of the things that marks his his prime ministerial role was the pandemic, and I think that that's one of the things that he did right. But when people look at the overall, for example, there was $100 billion in new debt even before the pandemic hit, and our public finances are in pretty shaky position right now. They'll argue, no, we're not as bad as a lot of other countries, but it's simply the fact that we're not doing as well as we could and should be doing as a country, and Trudeau's going to pay the price for that.
So let me move from federal politics to provincial politics. Marc Tanguay has come out as the interim leader to let us know. I did this as a question earlier on, Tom, suggesting, gloves are off. We're going to renew the party, get in there, be combative against the CAQ. You buying any of that?
Oh, boy, poor Liberals. I mean, first of all, I have to say, because I criticized him enough times for accepting the interim leadership when he was keeping the door open for the permanent leadership, he did the right thing in pulling back and saying he wouldn't run for that. So he deserves full marks for that decision. But at the same time, I don't know if you caught this detail today. The big debate today was, do we imitate Premier David Eby of British Columbia and Doug Ford of Ontario, one on the left, one on the right, both saying, we'd like to send a message to the Bank of Canada. Canadians are suffering and don't increase interest rates. Well, lo and behold, that's the exact answer that Marc Tanguay gave. And 5 minutes later, this fellow Beauchamp, who's supposed to be their, one of their leading lights and a potential candidate for leadership, says the exact opposite into the microphones. When you're preparing a caucus retreat and you're in a place like Trois-Rivières and every journalist is there, dutifully covering every word, you've got to decide what the 5 messages are going to be that you're going to try to put through. And lo and behold, the one thing that was so obvious on everybody's agenda, they completely muffed it, and they had a really bad start to what should have been a slam dunk for them.
By the way, do you know this Frédéric Beauchemin, who now says he might consider throwing his name into the ring? What do we know about him?
He comes from the banking sector. He's highly regarded. He's telegenic. He's deeply experienced. He's a good communicator, except when he's saying the exact opposite of his interim leader. Yeah. So, he's still got a little bit of experience to acquire in the field of politics, because Tanguay gave a good political answer. Beauchamp gave a good banker's answer, and he's got to learn to leave his banker's hat at the door and become a politician if he wants to have a chance.
Can someone with such a low profile go as far as they need to go to then to become leader in such a short period of time?
Well, he's telegenic.
The Technicolor dream of the Liberals was on the stage today with Fitzgibbon and with Premier Legault. It's François-Philippe Champagne. I mean, he's a guy from a region, a very charmed region politically in Canada. He's from Shawinigan. His family is very wealthy. They're very successful business people up there. They had the arena is named, the local arena is named for his family's business. I mean, they're serious folks, and he had his own very impressive curriculum vitae before he went into politics. He's a sharp guy, fluently bilingual, all that stuff. The Liberals would give their eye teeth to have this guy as their next leader.
Well, for everyone who doesn't know who he is. Tom, final word here. Freedom Convoy trial. We're going to have a reporter on this in a little while. What'd you make of what you saw today? Anything?
Look, I'm a lawyer, and I realize that you've got to. This is a criminal accusation. The Crown has to prove every element of this offense beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think that a lot of the people who are watching this are saying, oh, yeah, but the convoy was this, the convoy was that. Yes, it was. That's true. But these are individuals who are facing criminal accusations. And I have a feeling that it's going to be quite tough to get a conviction in these cases. That's my sense. of what I've been watching so far. And that could wind up being a big political issue, because you see, we had Justice Rouleau's report saying, "Oh no, this was okay to bring in the the equivalent of the War Measures Act, the Emergencies Act. It was a borderline case, but I'll accept that it was legitimate in this case." But if they start getting these cases going before the criminal courts, it might seem like they're overplaying their hand by bringing criminal accusations. And that's what I'm going to try to follow on the political level. Is this going to have repercussions for Trudeau for his handling of the pandemic and of the truckers' convoy?
Tom, it's good to have you back.
It is.
Great to be with you.
Talk to you again
soon.
later in the week. You bet.